Silence has a weight to it that words can never quite match. When you choose to remain silent instead of chasing, explaining, or trying to fix things, it speaks volumes in a way that cuts deeper than any conversation ever could. People expect a reaction. They expect drama, explanations, or a desperate attempt to win them back. But when none of that comes, when instead there is a calm, unshakable silence, it creates a powerful shift that lies awake at night, because your silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of strength, and that strength forces her to think in ways she never thought she would. Think about it. When someone pulls away from you, the natural instinct is to close the gap, to reach out, to chase. That's the predictable reaction. But silence flips the script. When you stay quiet, when you resist the urge to fill the space with explanations or pleas, you're not giving her what she expects, and that unexpected response unsettles her. It plants questions in her mind. Why isn't he reaching out? Why doesn't he care enough to fight for me? Has he moved on already? Those questions loop endlessly, and the more she tries to silence them, the louder they get. That's why she's awake in the middle of the night, staring at her phone, tempted to reach out just to break the silence that's eating her alive. Silence has a way of forcing self-reflection. When you're gone and you're not filling her world with your presence, she has no choice but to turn inward. The distractions fade and she begins replaying moments in her head. She remembers the way you laughed, the way you listened, the way you gave her your time and energy. In the daylight, when she's surrounded by noise and people, she might brush those memories off. But at night, when it's just her and her thoughts, your silence echoes the loudest. She feels the loss of your energy and it weighs heavy. What makes silence so powerful is that it carries with it an undeniable message of control. It says you are not desperate, you are not clinging, you are not broken without her. It says you have boundaries and self-respect. And when a man shows that kind of strength, it creates a magnetic pull. Because what most people don't realize is that desperation pushes others away, but calm, unshaken silence draws them closer. She can't stop thinking about you, not because you're chasing her, but because you're not. The lack of pursuit makes her question her own value in your eyes, and that's when the tables turn. First, she may try to act like it doesn't bother her. She'll put on a smile, keep herself busy, maybe even convince herself that silence means freedom. But over time, the silence becomes unbearable. Why? Because it's not neutral, it's a mirror. Your silence forces her to see what life is like without you in it. And while she may not admit it out loud, deep down she compares the emptiness she feels now to the comfort she once had with you. That comparison keeps her restless, and it only grows stronger the longer you stay silent. There's also an element of mystery in your silence. When you're not updating her, when you're not explaining yourself, when you're not giving her a window into your life, her imagination runs wild. She wonders what you're doing, who you're with, and whether you've already replaced her. And the human mind hates uncertainty. It craves answers. That craving is what makes her restless. What makes her replay conversations in her head, what makes her second guess her decision. Your silence turns into a puzzle she can't solve, and the harder she tries, the more it consumes her. That is why silence speaks louder than words. Words can be brushed off, argued against, or ignored, but silence lingers. Silence grows. Silence becomes the loudest voice in the room. It makes her confront everything she's been avoiding, and it keeps her up at night with thoughts she can't escape. And the more you embrace it, the more powerful it becomes, until she realizes the only way to find peace is to break that silence herself. That's the hidden strength of silence. It keeps you grounded, it keeps you dignified, and it keeps her thinking of you long after you've stopped thinking of her. Silence doesn't just create mystery, it creates contrast. When you were present in her life, she was used to your energy, your presence, your attention. She knew what it felt like to have you around, and she may have even taken it for granted. But the moment you pull back and stay silent, everything changes. The absence of your voice, your text, your attention, it doesn't go unnoticed. Instead, it creates a void. And human nature is such that we don't fully recognize the value of something until it's missing. That's why your silence becomes the very thing that amplifies your importance in her mind. Think of it this way. When music stops playing, it's the silence that makes you realize how much you miss the sound. When someone leaves the room, it's the emptiness they leave behind that makes you aware of their presence before. This is exactly what happens when you choose silence. She starts to notice the absence of what she once overlooked. Every little thing you used to bring into her life now stands out because it's no longer there. The comfort of your voice, the reassurance of your presence, the way you used to listen, all of that suddenly becomes magnified in her mind. This is why silence is so unsettling. It's not just that you're quiet, it's that your quietness highlights everything she no longer has. In the past, she might have felt secure knowing you'd always reach out, always be available, always chase her when she pulled away. But silence disrupts that expectation. It forces her to realize that you're not waiting around, and that realization alone triggers a sense of loss. She starts to compare the comfort of when you were there to the unease of your absence, and that comparison plays on repeat in her head. What makes this even more powerful is that silence shifts the balance of power. When you stop speaking, you stop feeding her ego with your attention, you stop being predictable, you stop being the one who carries the emotional weight. Suddenly, she has to carry it. She has to wonder, question, and overthink. She has to deal with the uncertainty of not knowing where she stands with you anymore. And that uncertainty is often more powerful than any argument, any explanation, or any words you could ever offer. Silence also stirs her emotions because it brings out the natural human tendency to fill in the blanks. When you're not giving her answers, when you're not sharing your thoughts, her mind races to create them for you. She wonders what you're thinking, what you're doing, whether you've already moved on, or whether you've stopped caring altogether. And because the imagination is often far more powerful than reality, her mind creates scenarios that make your silence feel even heavier. She starts to imagine you with someone else, living your best life without her, and that alone is enough to keep her restless. Over time, this contrast between what she had and what she's lost begins to wear on her. She might try to distract herself with other people, with work, with hobbies, but nothing truly fills the space your silence has created. That's because silence isn't empty, it's full of meaning. It represents your boundaries, your self-respect, and your unwillingness to chase. And when she sees that, it shifts her perception of you. Suddenly, you're not the man who needed her validation. You're the man who can stand strong on his own. That image alone makes her rethink everything. And here's the truth. When she realizes that your silence is not a game, but a reflection of your strength, it makes her respect you in a way words never could. Respect is the foundation of attraction. And when your silence commands it, she feels it deeply. That respect mixes with curiosity, regret, and longing, and together, those emotions become overwhelming. That's why she lies awake at night replaying the past, wishing she could undo her mistakes, and questioning how she let you slip away. In the end, your silence becomes a mirror that forces her to confront her feelings. It highlights what she lost, it stirs her emotions, and it creates a pull that she can't ignore. That's why silence isn't weakness, it's one of the strongest moves you can make because it doesn't just make her notice your absence, it makes her feel it in the deepest way possible. When you choose silence, you aren't just removing yourself from the conversation, you're creating space for her to confront her own thoughts and feelings. This is where the power of silence truly lies. It's not just about what you don't say, it's about what she begins to say to herself in your absence. See, when a woman realizes that the man who once gave her attention, validation, and energy is no longer doing so, it forces her into a position she doesn't expect. She now has to face the silence. And in that silence, her own mind becomes louder than anything else. Think about it. When you were around, you gave her constant feedback. Your presence reassured her. Your words made her feel secure. Your actions gave her clarity about where she stood with you. But when you pull back, when you stop explaining, when you stop filling every gap with reassurance, she is left with the unknown. And the unknown is unsettling. It sparks questions she can't easily answer. Why isn't he calling? Why isn't he texted? Did he lose interest? Is he moving on? Did I push him too far? These questions repeat endlessly in her head, and because there are no answers from you, her imagination runs wild. The mind hates uncertainty, and in the absence of clear answers, it fills the silence with assumptions, projections, and fears. This is why your silence is far more powerful than arguing or explaining yourself. Words can be debated, twisted, or dismissed. Silence, on the other hand, leaves nothing for her to fight against. It leaves her with herself. And that is the hardest confrontation anyone can have. She begins replaying past interactions, searching for clues. She starts remembering things you said, ways you acted, times when you may have hinted at your boundaries or expressed your frustration. Suddenly, moments she brushed aside or took lightly become magnified in her memory. She wonders if her actions led to this silence. She wonders if you've had enough. She wonders if you've simply moved on without her. And that wondering can eat away at her more than anything else because there's no closure, no certainty, and no control. This is where the emotional weight shifts completely. Before, you may have been the one overthinking, the one constantly wondering what she felt or whether she cared. But silence flips that dynamic. Now she's the one lying awake at night, overanalyzing every detail, while you stand firm and unbothered. Your silence forces her into the very position she may have once put you in, and that role reversal is powerful. It teaches her without words that your energy isn't something to be taken for granted. And here's the beauty of it. Silence doesn't just make her think about you. It makes her feel the loss of your presence in a way that words never could. When she sits alone with her thoughts, she realizes how much space you actually occupied in her life. It might be the little things, your laugh, your encouragement, your attention, or it might be the bigger things like the security you gave her simply by being consistent. Whatever it is, silence brings all of it to the surface. She doesn't just think about you, she feels you missing. Over time, this internal dialogue becomes heavier. She may try to convince herself she doesn't care, but silence keeps chipping away at that facade. She may try to distract herself with others, but those connections often feel shallow compared to the depth you brought into her life. And the more she tries to escape it, the louder her own thoughts become. Silence doesn't give her an escape route. It doesn't let her run from accountability. It holds up a mirror and forces her to face the consequences of her choices. That's why silence works when nothing else does. It's not manipulation. It's the natural result of stepping back and letting someone feel what life is like without you. It's allowing her to wrestle with her own emotions instead of carrying them for her. It's letting her discover the value of what she lost on her own terms. And once that realization hits, it sticks deeper than anything you could have ever explained. So remember this, when you stay silent, you're not doing nothing. You're doing the most powerful thing possible. You're giving her space to feel the weight of losing you. And that weight, once it sinks in, is what makes her realize your true worth. The real power of silence is that it teaches her something words never could: the consequences of her own actions. When you step back and stop chasing, stop explaining, stop fighting for her attention, You're no longer giving her the comfort of knowing that you'll always be there no matter how she treats you. Silence is not about punishment. It's about clarity. It communicates without a single word that your presence is a privilege, not something she can take for granted. At first, she may interpret your silence as indifference. She might even try to test you to see if you'll break, to see if you'll come back running like before. But as the days stretch into weeks, that silence transforms into a mirror, forcing her to confront the reality that she no longer has the influence over you that she once did. The longer you hold your ground, the clearer it becomes to her that you have detached emotionally, and that's when the respect begins to grow. See, many men make the mistake of trying to talk a woman into respecting them. They beg, they plead, they over-explain, and in doing so, they actually lose more respect. Respect is not something you demand with words. It's something you command with actions. And silence is one of the strongest actions you can take because it communicates strength, self-control, and discipline. When she realizes that you won't break your silence just because she snaps her fingers, she starts to understand that you are a man who values himself above all. That realization changes everything. What's even more powerful is how silence highlights the contrast between you and others. If she was used to men chasing her endlessly, giving her attention on demand, or folding the moment she pulled away, your silence shocks her. It breaks the pattern she expected. Suddenly, she sees you in a different light, not as someone desperate for her validation, but as someone capable of walking away without hesitation. That contrast plants a seed of doubt in her mind. Did I lose a man who is truly different? And that question alone has the power to keep her up at night. Silence also resets the balance of energy in the dynamic. When you were always available, always responding, always showing interest, no matter how she treated you, the balance was tilted in her favor. She had all the control and you were left hoping she'd appreciate it one day. But silence flips that script. Now she's the one left waiting, the one left wondering, the one left feeling the void. And this shift is where respect begins to grow, because she realizes you're not afraid to walk away. Nothing commands more respect than a man who is willing to lose her rather than lose himself. Over time, she learns the most important lesson. Silence means strength. Silence means self-respect. Silence means you no longer need her to validate you because you've already validated yourself. And ironically, that's exactly when she starts craving your validation again. She begins to remember the value you brought into her life, the way your presence made her feel, and the stability she once overlooked. But this time, she knows she has to earn it back because silence has shown her that you won't settle for less. This is why silence is so powerful. It doesn't just make her think about you, it makes her respect you. And without respect, there can be no genuine attraction, no genuine connection. By holding your silence, you're not only making her miss you, you're teaching her that your love, your time, and your attention come with standards. And when she realizes that, it changes everything about how she views you. So remember, the silence isn't empty. It's full of lessons, realizations, and the slow but powerful return of respect. And once that respect is rebuilt through your silence, it stays because it was earned, not given.